Imagine you're in your electrical car on your way to a friend to have some dinner.
And while you eat, you charge your car at your friend's place, but you are the one paying the electricity bill.
Because in the near future, the stuff we have at home will be able to produce and store energy. Stuff like solar panels, electrical vehicles, or heat pumps, because they will have their own digital identity.
And this will help us to sell surplus energy to the grid. It's good for us and great for the grid.
In this episode, we will explain how this will work and why it is important. To guide us into this future landscape of energy, we welcome Sebastiaan Coppenholle, Innovation Project Manager at 50 Hertz in Germany. Welcome, Sebastiaan.
Welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, very welcome, Sebastiaan. It's a pleasure to have you here. But I've been looking a bit at your profile, and you live in Berlin, you come from Belgium, you lived in Paris and London. I just wonder, what's home for you?
I think I try to make every place home where I've been, but I think right now home is a bit split in between Belgium and Germany, and home is where my girlfriend is in Germany, and home is also where most of my friends and my family is in Belgium. So I'm living in two houses at the moment.
I know how to actually define where your home is. Which country of these countries does your favorite dish come from?
I think that's a very good question. I think they all have very nice cuisines, but I will make a decisive answer. I still think that the Belgian cuisine, especially there's a dish called stoofvlees, which is a kind of a stew, which we make with beer and with even there's sandwiches with mustard going into this. It sounds strange, but it's a very amazing dish, and I can definitely recommend this for people listening, for you guys. So I think if we have to define my home on the basis of food, I think it's still Belgium.
I think we discovered it.
Yeah, next time we go to Belgium, we definitely have to try it. What was the name of the dish, Sebastiaan?
The name of the dish is stoofvlees. So it's basically it's a stew.
Never forget that, Christina.
We will have to take some notes after this episode. Welcome to The Switch, not just another podcast. With me here today, of course, Alexander Helling. Are you ready to push some buttons, Alex?
Yes, I am ready to push some buttons.
Sebastiaan, if you didn't know that, we have two buttons, and my favorite one is the green one. It's the awesome button. I will push it very much, and then I will leave the other one, which is the
bullshit button,
to Alex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you ready for that?
Okay. I mean, I would say put the red button away, and we just continue with green. But let's see where we go.
But you know what? It's also because we want to emphasize what needs to be done in this society in order to be able to make the switch.
Okay.
And that's why you're here. Your employer, 50 Hertz, is a part of Elia Group, which is one of Europe's top 5 transmission system operators. I know, maybe you know, but if I would be a 10-year-old, can you actually describe to me what does a transmission system operator actually do?
I think that's a very good question, because even you say to a 10-year-old, even I think as me as a 22-year-old didn't know what a transmission system operator did. So
then I was not alone.
No, exactly. So I very often encounter this when people meet me and tell me, what do you do? And throughout the years, I try to find the strategy to best tell people what a transmission system operator does. And I found it the most tangible is saying that we are the companies that manage the very big power lines next to the highways that you see running through the country. So these are the power lines on basically these big pylons. What does that mean is that we have infrastructure in countries like Belgium and in the northeastern part of Germany. But this also means that we are kind of an intermediate between generation, meaning power plants, meaning renewable energy generation, and then also the consumer. Not directly the consumer, because we only manage the high voltage lines. So this means that there is still a distribution system operator, a DSO, in between. But we take care of the highways of electricity, as if to say.
So basically saying that you're moving the electricity from the point where it's generated to the end consumer, and then it's more complicated than that. But if I would explain that for my four-year-old to summarize what you just said, that's probably how I would frame it.
Our mission statement is we try to keep the lights on, and we try to do this by indeed building infrastructure, by keeping the system up and running, and also by making sure that electricity is always there when you need it.
Good explanation. Thank you for that.
Very good. So, in this podcast, we talk a lot about renewable energy and the need for additional renewable energy and the generation of it. But we haven't had an episode on the grid system, because even if we, would be able to generate all the electricity necessary from renewable energy sources, if without the grid system, it doesn't work, right? And Bill Gates said in a speech at the COP28 that without transmission, there's no transition. So, it's going to be very interesting to have this dialogue. How can we find and build and operate grid system for the future?
But what are the actual problems for the grid, if you say? What would you say?
Well, we actually see, and I think it's very nicely phrased also, exactly as was mentioned by Bill Gates and by other people, saying like, okay, we are going to be the enablers here. Not trying to say that we're going to do this alone, we're going to need everyone. But we as a transmission system operator, we see two big challenges. Looking towards history, and now we see that there will be way more requests of renewable energy being fed into the grid. Renewable energy, due to the fact that we all know we need to get more energy from non-CO2 emitting resources. This means that this energy will be coming from solar farms, will be coming from, for instance, wind turbines. We already know that there is a lot of difficulties with these. Even on the generation side, just to where to put them, we already know that there's complications to put them, there's complications to finance them, but we see from a grid perspective that on that side there is a lot of issues with the variability of these resources. So we see that wind isn't always blowing when we need it. Sometimes it's blowing too much. Sometimes also we have issues with, sun, we also don't know when there will be a cloud in front of the sun, and our solar farm won't generate what we need it to. So that is one challenge. The second challenge mainly relates then to the other side, is basically the consumption, where we see that the consumption in the past was quite predictable and quite stable, where you see these very beautiful load curves where you see in the morning people going to work, you see that at noon it dips down a bit because people go out, and then in the evening basically you have an uptake because people put on their television and their washing machine, etc. But now we see that there's a lot of other devices coming into play with this. There's also a huge electrification here, saying okay, electric vehicles are getting more and more an uptake. You see a lot of countries. I recently read that Belgium is actually the second country, or the second country in Europe to take up so many electric vehicles in 2023. These are large impacts that. These devices have large impacts on the system because we're going to require a lot more energy to supply all of these devices. And this is a big challenge that we see definitely when the generation is becoming so variable.
So, Sebastiaan, thank you. That's very interesting. But if we just go back to the intermittency part, because if we add a lot of new renewables, then that's going to be a huge challenge for the grid. How do you see that grid operators or grid companies can, or utilities can work with? How do you solve that puzzle?
Well, we try to tackle it on different fields. Where one of the big fields that we're trying to tackle as well is we're trying to see that we have good forecasts of these different types of generation as well, because we see. First of all, us as a grid operator. This is kind of a weak spot if we don't have the generation that we need, because that means that we have to go at the end, last minute, go buy in the market some generation, which will be very expensive. So cost wise, it's actually for us very beneficial to invest now time and money and resources into these forecasts, making sure that we are able to predict what will be coming from these different type of resources. And this is actually, I mean, this is one of the main areas where we're also trying to focus on, get this data, make sure that we get forecasts. We also do a lot with artificial intelligence to see if we can do different modeling of this of these renewable energy generation plants. Yeah.
Very interesting. And just to follow up on that one, sorry, Christina.
Don't say sorry.
No, but and in those predictions, and I understand that, if you can make the forecast in the right way, then you can plan on how you do that grid. But it's also another prediction is that we need to go from, a global consumption of 8,000 gigawatts a year up to, somewhere between 20 to 30 when we electrify everything here in the future. So do you then also need to, I'm guessing that in those predictions, you also have to look at what would be the future consumption need and how do we then build out and structure the grid, right?
That's actually what we're constantly trying to do. So constantly we have departments that are just constantly busy with trying to envision what will be needed in the future. So also, I mean, what kind of generation will be needed in the future. We are now, for instance, doing studies with industry, trying to look, okay, electrification, what will that look like within different industries? What are their investment plans looking forward? Not only for us to make sure that, I mean, that we know how much renewables there will be needed, or how much we need to integrate into the system, but also, I mean, for us, that's really on an infrastructure level, that's very crucial for us to know, okay, how much extra lines do we need? I mean, how much more connection points do we need? This is really for us trying to hedge our future. I mean, trying to hedge towards the future, that we have enough, that we don't have to deconnect certain people because we basically can't integrate them all into the system. And there's constantly modeling going on with regards to this, and topics such as flexibility, what we're here to talk about today, also play a very big role here, as they can decrease a bit of the pressure of those peaks, and they can help us as a system operator.
Interesting. But if, I mean, this is all from your perspective. If we put ourselves in the situation of the ordinary energy consumer, this future energy system, what does it actually mean? And what's your role as one of the consumers?
Well, for the consumer, we see now, and I think this is a good point to raise as well, is that we know that we're quite far away from the consumer. So, I mean, in the innovation department,
how can you know that you're far away from the consumer?
It's because first of all, we are as a company quite far away from the consumer, as we don't have direct contact with them, as we are still working on the high voltage lines. The nearest player is basically the DSO, or basically the retailer. They will be having contact more with the consumer, while we as a TSO are still a step above this. So for us, we know that we need a consumer to be part of the transition.
How do you know that? You know that you need.
That's a good question. We know that because we see that the consumer has purchased a lot of these, or is going to purchase in the next few years, a lot of these decentralized energy resources, meaning electric vehicles, meaning heat pumps, meaning solar panels. This is something that we see appearing in all neighborhoods, on people's houses. They buy this because of climate reasons, because of tax reasons, because of cheaper energy reasons. Everyone has their reasons to buy these. We see that these are assets which are only being used a certain amount of the time. So that means that, for instance, an electric vehicle, we will have an enormous uptake of electric vehicles in the next few years. But we see that an electric vehicle basically is used 5, maximum 10% of the time. Rest of the time, basically, an electric vehicle is a battery that stands behind an access point. So it's basically a battery that is for us, that could for us potentially be useful for the grid when, for instance, the grid is completely congested, and basically prices are extremely high, and we need to get are extremely low, and we need to basically get rid of electricity on the grid. That's the moment that batteries could help us out and could basically extract this electricity from the grid. Opposite scenario is...
Wait, stop there. Yes. Explain that to a 10-year-old. What did you just speak? I think it's pretty cool what you just said.
Okay. To a 10-year-old, I would say I often make the connection that a grid is very much like a bathtub full of water. It's a bathtub full of water where basically you have production that goes in. This is when you turn the handle and more water flows in. Basically, you also have the little thing that you can play with on the bottom. This is basically the consumption. And what we try to do as a transmission system operator, we try to keep this level of water always at the same level, because that's when a grid is stable. What does it mean when actually your water is starting to overflow? That means that there is too much generation, so there's too much in feed of electricity, and there's not enough taken out. So what will this mean is that your bathtub is going to overflow. What we will ask from these customers which have an electric vehicle is to start charging their electric vehicle at those moments, and basically pull open the plug a bit more of this water tub filled with water. This way, we will be able to stabilize the grid in a manner which is very fast, and where also then the consumer can also benefit from.
How will it benefit? Is it because of cost, or is it because of?
It will basically benefit the consumer, because at that moment right now we have specific mechanisms that we pay certain parties to take off electricity when we have too much electricity in the grid. This is also, and it will also be reflected in the electricity prices, where even in a near future, we could pay electric vehicles driver to be standby and to basically take off from the grid, or even at those moments, we will also see that the prices will be very positive to consumers to basically start charging their vehicle. So they will have an incentive from their side to participate.
So Sebastiaan, just so I get this right. So what you're saying is, I have solar panels on my roof. I can charge my electric vehicle when the electricity price is low, and then when the electricity prices are high, I can actually use that electricity in my electric vehicle and sell that back to you guys.
Exactly.
That's right?
That's exactly
awesome.
Correct.
You like that, huh? You saw the opportunity. Good. Interesting.
But is this possible already today, or this is systems that need to be built in?
It's a good question that you ask, because the reason is we don't expect everyone to, because maybe us in the room here, we might be energy geeks, or we might be the persons that will look on their phone every 2 seconds and will see what is the electricity price, should my car be charging, but we don't expect the bigger part of the people who buy electric vehicles to be such energy geeks. What we expect is that there will be a new role opening up, a role of an aggregator, who will basically have a portfolio of thousands of these vehicles, and who will basically try to do these optimizations for the end consumer. We see now that these roles are starting to pop up, but there are still, there's still some. It's still very early for these companies, and there's still some barriers that they have that they're facing. But this is an evolution that we can definitely see happening in the next 2 to 3 years. But will it be at your hands with your phone? If you're interested, yes, but probably not.
No, but also it's pretty cool that both I can produce electricity with solar panels from my house, and then I can sell that electricity at night. And even if I'm not the one doing it on my cell phone, it's someone helping me out with that. It can be an app, it can be a company that aggregates everything. Still the knowledge that's actually happening from my own house and car is pretty cool.
I love that too. I kind of get a question in my head. If it's so cool, and if it's what is stopping us from being there already now?
I think that's a good question. The very easy answer is data. Data is very often a blocker in a lot of these new services, new technologies. Basically, what
data from consumers or data from transmission?
It's basically data all through the value stream, basically. So the idea here, let's take an easy example, saying that we have a vehicle that in the evening could participate in some services that we as a TSO are providing, or that an aggregator is providing. This aggregator is going to have to know some information about the vehicle, about the state of charge, about how fast it will basically be able to feed into the grid, whose vehicle is this? I mean, what electricity contract is attached to that? There are certain data flows which are not existing at the moment that we will need to be, that we will need to discover, we need to make transparent in the future. And very important there is that we also understand that for an end consumer, they also start realizing that data is getting more and more away from their control. So we find it very important that whenever we enable this, that it's still very visible for the end consumer that the data is still in their control.
So explain that. So what you mean, I mean, data is power, right?
Data is indeed power.
And I mean, if you're letting go of data to some extent from either direction, is it a power struggle?
It is right now. What we see in the market is that there's a lot of parties sitting on their respective data. They know, okay, this is data that we get from our metering devices, and they will only transfer this data when, first of all, either it's regulatory needed, or when there is basically a push from a service that can enable this.
Then I will call bullshit on all of them who are keeping data, because that's actually stopping us from doing that transformation that we need to do, right?
That's entirely correct. But for instance, when we talk to car manufacturers, for instance, some of them are very big giants that operate in a very slow manner, but there are faster, nimbler companies out there. Definitely, when we look into the electric vehicle producers, and what they see an interest to indeed let their cars participate as a battery, but there needs to be an existing service behind as well. So they need to make sure they what they are asking is a service where their vehicles can participate in, and this is still something that we are in development of, and then also definitely to make this connection that the data can be transferred in a transparent manner, in a manner which is secure, and in a manner which gives control to the end user. This is something that we are looking into right now, and this is, for instance, where our SSI solution could be of benefit.
Exactly, that's where I wanted to go by. Now you mentioned it, SSI, that stands for Self-Sovereign Identities. If someone who's listening to this episode hasn't heard about it, could you give us a 30-second pitch about what it is?
Exactly. I like to say, instead of self-sovereign identities, it's a digital identity. So the easiest thing is to compare it to the identity you have in your wallet. I mean, everyone has an identity card. This identity card is stored in your wallet, probably either in your purse or in your pocket pants. This identity card has been issued by a government, making it so that wherever you take this identity card to a border control, basically people will believe who you say you are, because this has been issued by government of Germany, government Belgium, any government. We basically try to extrapolate this principle, and we try to also now do this to recognize the assets behind the access point. Because what is our issue as a transmission system operators, that we don't know a lot about electric vehicles because they are not directly attached to our grid, and we don't have direct data flows with them. So we would like to recognize them once they are plugged in somewhere and an aggregator would need information about them. How would we do that? We now came up with the concept of self-sovereign identities, but then for an asset. So what does this mean is that actually this electric vehicle will very much like ourselves get an identity card. This will of course not be a real card, but it will be a digital identity that will be stored onto a wallet into the vehicle. That's basically very similar to how our government issues. This can be issued by the car manufacturer. Car manufacturer says, I trust, I promise you that this is a BMW model, I don't know what, this battery capacity, this kind of charging speed, these are certain credentials that they can put in here. And to whatever device this car then comes, it can the car can show, look, I got this credential from my creator, as if to say, from BMW, from Audi, from whoever, and hereby you can verify that I am indeed the vehicle which I say I am. And for us as a transmission operator, this is crucial, because if we will be onboarding this large amount of decentralized energy resources, like electric vehicles, we will have to know what they are, and how much the capacity is, and how fast they can ramp up and down. These are all things that we will need to know. And that's why we saw that that these self-sovereign identities, or these digital identities, can really be of use. I know it was a bit longer than a 30-second
that
pitch,
is
but
why when Alex comes to dinner to my place and he plugs in, the cheap bastard, when he plugs in his car in my grid, then he's actually paying for it himself. Because
exactly, and I think
it will recognize that this is not Christina's car, so this is Alex's car, so it will go on his bill, right?
It's going to be a problem.
It's going to be a problem.
it's going to be a problem, but I think now is a good moment to press the green button, because that is actually a quite amazing thing. That you can actually indeed go over to his house, and basically your car will also then have your own supply contract in there, and basically there will be made a connection between how much you charge at her house, and basically how much, and this basically you get taken home on your own electricity bill, which we see as one of the use cases which it could have in the future, but we see a lot more potential as well.
This all is based on self-sovereign identities. Is it the only technical solution for sharing information in the future energy landscape?
It's not the only technology. We are looking out into different fields as well, but the reason why we jump onto these self-sovereign identities is because we see that it is a technology which enables end consumers to really lock in their own data. One of the applications that it has is that when you share your data, you're able to select which data you share. So see it as indeed a wallet where when you open the wallet, you only show certain parts and the rest you blur, and that is basically what we try to empower the end consumer with, because these aggregators, they don't need to know all details of your energy contract. They might only need to know what your EIN number is, and they might only need to know who actually your supplier is, but they don't need to know exactly how much you pay. These are things that you can then decide what data am I going to share, what data am I not going to share. And there we see, in contrast to all of the other solutions that are out there, that it is really a solution that can empower end consumers. Now, what we need to test now is how this can be taken up by the end consumers as well, and how easily integratable it is.
That actually leads me to my next question. When do you think that this can actually be a natural part of our daily lives? Are we talking about 3, 5, 10 years? Where are we?
Well, definitely, if we talk about the integration of decentralized energy resources, we see the uptake rather fast. So we see that there is in a 2 to 3 year span, we will have so much electric vehicles, and we see an upcoming of also even smart charging, which is already going to help the system a lot. But when we really look into the creation of these services, and then also maybe a possible uptake of SSI, we're really looking more towards 5 years and beyond. But we see there is really a necessity to facilitate this uptake.
And there is the existing grid structure flexible enough to handle this, or do we have to do massive infrastructure investments into updating that grid at the same time?
Well, it will be an interesting dynamic actually between the two, because we see that with the fact that there's a lot of electric vehicles coming onto the grid, we need a lot more charge points, which will also need a lot of power. So there's a lot of investments needed to enable this. But we see that if we look into flexibility, we might have some efficiency gains where we can indeed benefit from, and that's why it is so important to integrate them in the best way possible.
Definitely, but going back again to where we dropped on it, I think there is a lot of awareness that needs to be created. Even SSI, or self-sovereign identities, is actually a pretty new phenomenon in our world today. And for the consumers to be able to trust it and to start sharing, and also for the manufacturers to see the opportunity, it's going to take a lot of persuading or making sure that they understand the opportunity, as you say. You can see it, but how do we do that for the general public?
The plan, indeed, going forward is we have a lot of players in this value chain, going down from indeed DSOs, from aggregators to end consumers, and we have to show value for each and every one of these. But then, definitely for the end consumer needs to realize that they can't stay passive in this energy transition anymore. They have to be more aware of why they have to do certain things. They have to be more aware of why they have to shift their charging behaviors. This will be enabled by aggregators, but these aggregators will therefore also be offering cheaper. A reduction on your energy prices, or a reduction on the bill at the end of the month. And this is something where we're trying to persuade end consumers with, that they will, by enabling this, by installing these wallets, they will be able to participate in services that will at the end of the month reduce their energy bills. And this is then positive for them as well as it is for us as a system operator, because they will be enabling this transition and they will be helping us, facilitating us doing our job. And for them, it will actually amount to cheaper electricity bills at the end of the month.
Not bad.
Not bad. Awareness, definitely. But when awareness is also connected to cost. And I think that we have a question from Rory, who's 4-year-old actually. And he asks following question to you.
Questions from our future.
Who should pay from the better world?
Well, Rory, that's a very good question. To make a better world, we actually don't need anyone to pay. We basically need everyone to cooperate, because paying, that doesn't really sound that well. We need everyone to cooperate, and that way everyone can benefit. So what does this mean? This means that you, your father, your mother, whoever is in your family needs to be smarter about when they charge their vehicle. They need to be smarter about when they put on the dishwasher. And they basically, in that way, they don't need to pay. They just need to think smarter about things, think different. And in that way, they will help the system forward, and they will also help the energy transition forward. And they will make sure that a lot of renewable energy will be better taken up into the grid. And we will be able to drive our electric vehicles as we want to. So next time you have dinner with your parents, Rory, I would say to your mom and dad to think more in an energy mindset, and then we can already get a very long way.
I love that answer. And it also gives me some hope in consideration that we can actually make something, each and every one of us can actually make a difference here. Exactly. So even Rory having that conversation with mom and dad, I can have that. So that's a good answer from you to Rory and to everyone else in this. I'm moving into summarizing the thoughts from today. I mean, when I listen to Sebastiaan, I start thinking about how much we need to make people understand that there's change coming, change in behaviors, change in technique, change in the way we use our actual tools we have in the house and so on. And for me, it's intriguing. I think it's exciting to look at the future century and to see that there is a lot of change happening, and it's going to be exciting to see how we're going to go about it to make people be a part of it. Yeah. What's your summary and thoughts?
But I also think, it will also drive both innovation, but also as from a personal note, not only installing the solar panel, but knowing that, by doing that, I can also be part of a bigger system. I can support others with the electricity I'm generating on my roof, or I can support others with the energy I have in my car. And by being part of that bigger system, I think that will, hopefully, encourage people to move faster in switching over to more green alternatives.
It's actually, for me, I don't know what you feel, Sebastiaan, when I say this. This is actually a more just and more democratic system that we could actually move into in the future.
We will have everyone basically helping themselves get indeed cheaper electricity prices or a cheaper electricity bill at the end of the month. So in that way, yes.
No, I'm just reflecting also on the other part that from this conversation. When I think about grid system or grid operators, I think high transmission lines and the cables going into the ground. But realizing to get this system to work, how much data will be necessary, not only from the grid operator but from everyone else. So I had no idea that the data was such a big part of it, and I think that's not many people understand that data is going to be crucial to make that transition and also to create a more flexible system that can handle more renewable energy.
Good summary. We are moving to an end, Sebastiaan, and we actually usually have finishing touches where we say an opportunity to share sunshine on someone. And I always take the opportunity to share sunshine on the actual guest. So you, in this case, coming here, sharing your knowledge and making sure that it's spread out so that more people are aware of it. Now, my question goes back to you. Is there anyone you would like to share some sunlight on that you would like us to look into, a person, an organization, or an initiative that would be good for us to share to the people listening and watching this?
For the organization, I think there is a organization that I know back from in my student days that basically do installing of renewable energy in Africa, and they do amazing work. I still have contact with them every now and then, and I think
What's the name of the organization?
The name of the organization is Humasol, and I think they do amazing work. And I think definitely from an energy perspective, and also to bring energy all over the globe, I think this is definitely an organization that for me can definitely get a ray of sunshine.
Awesome. Thank you. We shed a light on them. And as we said, in the end here, thank you, Alex, for joining me here. But most of all, thank you, Sebastiaan, for joining us here and telling all our listeners about the secrets of your world that are no longer a secret anymore. If you want to make sure that this exciting news that we just listened to and learned about is not going to be a secret, please make sure to share this episode to someone that you like, subscribe to the channel, and go in and talk to us, because we would like to know more about what your thoughts, if you had any questions, and we'll make sure that you get them answered as well. So that said, it's time to end up.
It is.
It is. And I hope that you have had a good time listening. Until next time we see you, take care. And if you can, someone else. See you. Goodbye. Take care.